So I put some slides together to sort of summarize the big picture of the Village Hall renovation project. I've gotten a number of questions over the past few weeks, ranging from, Village Hall's being renovated, people not knowing about it, why are we doing this, when is it going to happen, how long is it going to take, how much is it going to cost. And I thought it'd be really helpful to sort of compile all the information we've gotten over the past couple weeks as we've led into this discussion, to sort of summarize it, recap it here in one place, and to establish it sort of as a baseline. We all know when projects get undertaken, all kinds of things can happen with respect to a whole host of variables. And I thought it'd be interesting, worthwhile to put out a baseline of what we expect this project to be and sort of how we got to this point. There's a lot of material here. I know the night is getting late, so I'm going to try to go through this very quickly, but hopefully we can post this information on the website so people can look at it at their leisure after the fact. So, real briefly, history of Village Hall. This building's been here, was built in 1894. A lot of people don't realize the fire department actually used to be here originally. In 1930, they moved out to the building that we now know on Sloan and First Street. When the police department moved out, the fire department moved in 1930. When the fire department moved out, the police department moved in. Yeah, sorry, did I say that wrong? And then in 1972, the police department moved out to their facility that exists today down on South Orange Avenue. 1976, the building was placed on the Historic Register, National Register of Historic Places. Some of this immediate history predated our tenure here on the board, but again, it's worth noting the history. Back in 1999, there was an initial condition assessment from David Abramson and Associates. They did an estimate that the cost of construction at that time, back in 1999, was just under $1 million, including contingency. However, the village was contemplating the renovation of the firehouse and did not move forward with the renovations of Village Hall. Again, that was back in 1999. So you can see this conversation has been happening for quite a while, and the building clearly is at the point where, something has to be done. 2002, some engineers did a study and identified the presence of asbestos that was deemed friable. However, and it was removed at that time. The building does still contain asbestos, but it's encapsulated within the walls and ceilings, which obviously is safe as long as it's not touched. But that leads to the point that when the building is renovated, clearly the building will need to be evacuated and relocated to another place. Obviously, that material still exists. 2006, another estimate was done, or a condition assessment report from Wank, Adams, Slavin Associates. At that point, the estimate for construction was $2.5 million, including a contingency. So in that 7-year time frame, the estimate increased pretty significantly. Then fast forwarding to the past couple of years during our tenure on the board, again, the board has had an eye towards doing this building for a number of years. In 2008, RFQ was put out for architectural services, 25 responses were received, RFP was sent out to 10 qualified responders. March 2008, a contract was awarded to HMR for $313,000. A year later, they delivered a programmatic analysis, essentially, sharing their vision of the physical limitations and what the building, design for the building should be. As those discussions continued, the board was still, in general, a little leery about moving forward. We all knew it was going to be a very large endeavor, so there was some thought about, well, gee, are there other alternatives? So we awarded a contract to BB&P Associates last summer to do a market analysis to see, is there another alternative for the building? Earlier this year, they issued a report. They thought there were 3 options: a sale to the private sector, a sale with performance grants, and a sale leaseback to the village. Again, the village here, the general consensus on the board was, well, that's interesting. Now let's see, is there an actual market for this? Earlier this summer, we BB&P put out an RFEI, request for expressions of interest. In September, they provided a response. There was a single respondent to that RFEI, a company called Echelon, that was proposing a sale leaseback with a restaurant on the first floor. After much discussion, this board rejected that proposal, thinking it was not feasible. So again, this just goes to some of the history. Some people are saying, oh, why are we jumping into this? And I just, sort of want to paint the picture. We're not jumping into this. There's been a lot of analysis, a lot of thought, a lot of discussion about this project over the past number of years. Even, I believe it was last summer, we did actually explore other buildings. We actually looked at other properties in town. We considered leasing space in other buildings, and again, after doing the financial analysis, just felt it didn't make sense, particularly, and once we found out there was no real viable market for this building, that sort of sealed the deal. A whole host of information here about what's going to happen during construction, but in short, the plan currently as proposed is that the occupants of this building will relocate to mobile offices, or as they're affectionately known as trailers, on 2nd Street on a property that's owned by the village. There will be some cost to improve the site, as well as renting those trailers. The estimated cost for 2 years is about, all in, about $300,000. And then the one thing still outstanding, I think we still need to discuss where these meetings will be held, right? That's still not resolved, that's still an open issue. So something we'll need to discuss. It's a possibility,
Certainly the options.
Yeah. So again, that leads to the question, all right, when is all this going to happen? And some people are saying, well, why isn't construction already underway? It's worth noting there's a whole host of things that have to happen. And again, I'm not an architect or an engineer. This is material that was put together by the architect that we met with back on November 21st, and I just thought it would be useful to summarize it for everyone, because that meeting was not televised. So over the next, the first quarter, 2012, these... Oh, whoops, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you. The schematic drawings have to be updated, construction drawings have to be updated. We have to go out to RFP for a construction manager. We have to award that contract for construction manager. The construction bid itself has to be advertised and awarded, which will probably take place by probably second quarter of 2012. And again, all of these are very rough timelines, but it's, again, a stake in the ground. As far as the relocation, again, the site improvements have to be done at the site I referred to on 2nd Street. We have to go out to bid for those office trailers, or see if there's a state contract for them, award that contract, actually do the site improvements, install utilities, and physically relocate the folks that are located in this building to the new location. So again, all of that takes time, probably estimated to take the first half or so of 2012. So the construction itself, according to the architects, HMR architects, they expect it would take about 2 years to completely renovate and restore. Restore is probably not the right word, but renovate this building. And again, based on everything that was listed on the prior 2 slides, probably wouldn't start realistically until summer of 2012. Again, there's still quite a bit of work to be done, but those wheels are in motion. A lot of those bids are starting to be created. So again, to visually represent that, moving into early 2012, a lot of this preparation work, and then again for the 2-year construction period from mid-2012 to mid-2014, the actual construction, and then in theory, being back in this building by end of 2014. Again, as we will all know, projects, there's all kinds of things that could happen, so this is an estimate at this point in time, and it's certainly not no one is carving this in stone, no one's saying this is a commitment, but I think to think it's going to happen in 2013, for example, I think is unrealistic, and hopefully it would be in this general time frame. Of course, the big question always is cost. So I alluded to some of the costs that we had gotten previously back in 1999 and again in 2006. 2009, the estimate for just the construction was $3.9 million from the architect. According to the architect, that when we met with them several weeks ago back in November, they think because, essentially 3 years will have elapsed by the time construction starts, the revised estimate is expected to be $4.2 million for construction. When discussed, there are other fees, other costs involved, architect's fees, a construction manager, the expenses of relocation that I alluded to before, furnishing the building, potential add-ons such as sprinklers in the building or geothermal that are add-ons to this, landscaping, signage, etc. So to sort of summarize that, in a table here, again, I stated a lot of this. Again, the architect quantified a lot of these costs. He thinks a construction manager, roughly about $200,000 for the period, for 2 years. Again, the relocation for 2 years, furnishings, et cetera. So all in for the project, in a best case scenario, assuming, big bold words, big disclaimer, assuming no major snafus, we're thinking the number is $5.6 million. Obviously, there's other potential expenses that we should be aware of, so there's no surprises. You know, landscaping, for example, that shouldn't be a huge expense, but it's something to note. Again, if we go with the other options, such as geothermal or sprinklers, those are additional add-on costs. You know, obviously there's the known unknowns and the old unknown unknowns, right? We don't know exactly what they're going to find behind the plaster when they tear the building apart. We don't know, you know, as far as upgrades or change orders that may come into play as they go to renovate the building. So there's a whole host of potential options. Obviously, the engineer's job and the construction manager's job is to mitigate that risk, and our job, obviously, to keep a close eye on that with advice from counsel. But again, just want to set expectations. You know, in the best case, we're talking $5.6 million, but I think realistically, you know, we're probably talking, you know, $6-7 million with natural things that could occur over time. Hopefully, you know, it wouldn't go beyond that. So where does the money come from? Last year, we reallocated quite a bit of capital funding that was already in place for a total of $5 million that's in place. We've also been awarded a grant of $669,000 from CDBG.
Historic Trust Grant.
It's not CDBG? My mistake. I don't know where I got that from. Historic Trust Grant. Thank you for the clarification. I will update that. So add those two numbers, you know, that's really our best case scenario. So what was that?
There's another 150.
And another 150 on its way. Thank you.
No, it's already there.
Update the tote board. Okay, thank you. So, you know, generally the money, if things stay on track and go well, the money is in place. You know, again, our job and our goal now is to mitigate the risks as we go forward to ensure we don't exceed that significantly. So where do we go from here? When we left the meeting on November 21st, the architect was going to make some modifications to the interior layouts based on feedback from this board. The engineer, I believe, is working on bids to be sent out for the construction manager. Although construction won't begin until middle of next year, we do want to get that construction manager on board sooner rather than later in the first part of next year, so they can become familiar with the project, so it does get started. They're up to speed and can hit the ground running. And I believe we're also be sending out bids for the improvements to the 2nd Street site that need to be done as well as all the additional steps I talked about. And obviously I'll defer to the engineer to have a much more detailed, specific plan as we move into 2012. But again, I just wanted to sort of recap at a very high level and go through this quickly so everyone is on board with, you know, where we're going, how we got here, and what the outlook is for this building over the coming years. So that was it. I know I went through it quickly. Again, I think it'd be worthwhile to put this up on the website so people could refer back to it. But if anyone on the board had any comments or questions, or if Sal wanted to clarify, we can certainly do that.
I have comments. This was very good. It was even good for me, and I've been involved in the process since I've been here, but to show that, to address the concerns that while we're in a rush, you showed that this has been going on for well over a decade, and the longer we delay this, the more the cost goes up. So this was comprehensive and very good.